Is Hunter on the verge of being indicted? What would that mean for his father, President Joe Biden?
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's the short answer, but it sure seems that way. I think it's interesting, too, Maria, how this story has evolved, how it has changed. Remember, it started off as, oh, it wasn't his laptop. Then it was, well, it was his laptop, but it was Russian disinformation. Now it's, no, it wasn't Russian disinformation, but Joe had nothing to do with it. And now, finally, it is, well, Joe had something to do with it, but he really didn't do anything wrong.
That's Congressman Jim Jordan on this program last Sunday with Maria Bartiromo on the ever-changing narrative on Hunter Biden's laptop. Now a group of House Republican lawmakers are calling on the Department of Justice to brief Congress on the federal investigation into the president's son. In a letter to U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, they write, "It is imperative that the Department of Justice brief Congress on the nature of Mr. Weiss's investigation into Hunter Biden. Congress has a constitutional obligation to conduct oversight of the executive branch and a moral obligation to examine if the President of the United States or any senior official in his administration is ethically compromised or injured." Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs was one of 16 House Republicans to sign that letter. He joins us now. Congressman, thank you. I had the honor and privilege of serving with him in the Congress. This is a vital investigation. I mean, the crossover with the President of the United States, his time as vice president, and the millions of dollars that were flowing overseas, there seems to be more than ample evidence that the Department of Justice should give a briefing to the Congress. What would be their excuse not to do that?
Well, the only excuse they would have, Jason, is that they don't want to give us the information. They might say, well, we're in the middle of an investigation, so we're not going to comment on the investigation. That's what they tend to say. But the reality is, you need to remember, of course, and I think everybody does, that 51 former intelligence community folks said, no, there's nothing here. This is Russian disinformation. And that was to suppress this for the election in 2020. But the reality is, Jason, this goes back to when Joe Biden was the vice president. It goes back to $1 billion contract to his brother Jim. It goes back to other contracts given to Hunter Biden in Iraq. It goes to all the way to China and the Chinese energy company over there that gave them millions of dollars. And you see all of those seem to be perfectly tied with access to Joe Biden. So if they're not going to give us information, it does continue to look like the cover-up that we suspect it to be.
Well, what's evident on the laptop is the communication, the access to White House, using of Air Force Two. At one point, Hunter Biden actually brings his business partner on Air Force Two to fly to Mexico because they were trying to close a deal. So, but more importantly, I think the implications for the United States, any compromise, and the Department of Justice certainly at this point has got to have some information about the flow of money. And I would think that they should and have a constitutional duty and responsibility to actually brief Congress.
I agree with you. There's drips and drabs that a grand jury investigation is ongoing. You've got the Weiss investigation in Delaware. And all of these seem to indicate that this doesn't stop with Hunter Biden or Jim Biden or other members of the Biden grifting family. What it does is it all comes into access to Joe Biden. And that is why Congress needs to know, is this president, is he compromised? Is his family compromised? Are those around him compromised? And actually, quite frankly, is DOJ suppressing this? And if they are they compromised, certain folks and assets within DOJ? So we have to get to the bottom of it, and that's why we went ahead and pushed forward, and we're going to continue pushing to get more and more information. I think Ranking Member Jordan and my other colleagues on the Judiciary Committee and on the Oversight Committee, which you were chairman of, we've got to get to the bottom of this. The American people deserve to know because the international relationship of the U.S. to these countries is so vital. You have to know.
There is no excuse for them not to give you a briefing. This idea that it's an ongoing investigation is just hogwash. All right, but stay with us because we'll have more with Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs on the federal investigation into Hunter Biden in just a moment. You're watching Sunday Morning Futures right here on Fox News. And we're back with Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, I want to ask you about the Durham investigation because May 16th, that case against Michael Sussman is actually going to trial. What's the latest that you're hearing?
Well, I'm hearing that there's some emails that Durham has found that again show that Sussman lied to the FBI and that he also lied and misrepresented regarding the connection of all of this with DNC, which is the Democratic National Committee, and the Clinton campaign, and who paid for his bogus, information that he was throwing out there. So it's pretty interesting to see, and I'm not sure that the Clinton campaign folks or the Democrat Party wants to see this go to trial and air their dirty laundry even further.
The allegation here is that Michael Sussman got in with a meeting with the general counsel there at the Federal Bureau of Investigation by representing that he wasn't representing anybody, but there's other documentation and flow of money and logs and whatnot. That's why this is a case that is important, because these people had this incestuous relationship to be able to actually go in and access things that other people that are on the receiving end of these types of prosecutions don't get to do. So, Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona, thank you so much for joining us and all the good work that you do there on the Judiciary Committee in the United States Congress. Happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter, Jason. Thanks.